The drama surrounding Prime Mike Tyson in the late 1980s was unlike anything the boxing world had ever seen. Heavyweight champions had always commanded respect, but Tyson commanded something deeper and far more terrifying: pure fear. When he stepped into the ring during his prime, opponents weren't just worried about losing a fight, they were worried about surviving it. His presence alone could shake the confidence of seasoned fighters, and the moment the bell rang, the destruction usually followed within minutes. By the spring of 1987, Tyson had already begun carving out one of the most intimidating championship reigns in boxing history. Heavyweight belts were stacking up around his waist, and former champions who once ruled the division were being flattened like they had never belonged at the top. His style was brutal, relentless, and explosive. Every fight carried the same haunting question: how long would the opponent last before Tyson's power ended it? That spring, Tyson arrived in Las Vegas carrying two of the sport's most prestigious titles, the WBC and WBA heavyweight championships. He was only 20 years old, yet already the undisputed king of destruction in the heavyweight division. His training under Kevin Rooney had sharpened every aspect of his style, turning him into a perfect storm of speed, power, and aggression. But despite Tyson's terrifying reputation, one man standing across the ring refused to show even a hint of fear. His name was Pinklon Thomas, a former heavyweight champion known for his slick boxing skills, tough chin, and powerful jab. Thomas was not a newcomer hoping for a lucky night. He had built his career by defeating respected fighters like Quick Tillis, Mike Weaver, and Tim Witherspoon. He knew what championship fights felt like, and he believed Tyson was simply another obstacle to overcome. Thomas entered the fight with confidence that bordered on arrogance. His walk to the ring said everything about his mindset. Dressed head to toe in bright pink gear, he seemed determined to show the world that he was not intimidated by the most feared fighter alive. To Thomas, Tyson's aura meant nothing. He believed his jab was stronger, his boxing IQ was sharper, and his experience would expose weaknesses in the young champion. His legendary trainer Angelo Dundee fueled that confidence. Dundee spoke openly before the fight, boldly claiming Thomas had the better punches, the better left hand, and the ability to push Tyson into deeper rounds where things could change. It was the kind of pre-fight talk that built excitement, but also carried enormous risk. When you challenge a monster publicly, you better be ready for the consequences. The opening bell immediately revealed just how dangerous Tyson truly was. From the first seconds of the fight, he exploded forward like a missile. There was no slow feeling out process, no cautious testing of range. Tyson attacked with violent combinations, moving his head from side to side while launching hooks and uppercuts that echoed through the arena. Thomas barely had time to set up his jab before Tyson was already inside his guard, unleashing punches from impossible angles. The speed was overwhelming. Tyson didn't throw single shots, he threw storms of punches. Each one delivered with the power of a knockout blow. Thomas tried to follow Dundee's instructions, attempting to create angles and avoid standing directly in front of Tyson's power. But Tyson's pressure made it almost impossible. Every time Thomas tried to plant his feet and fire his jab, Tyson closed the distance and answered with devastating counters. One left hook crashed into Thomas's jaw. Then another followed. Tyson's uppercuts began slicing through the middle whenever Thomas leaned forward to protect himself. The opening round quickly turned into a nightmare for the challenger. Thomas was rocked repeatedly, staggered across the ring by heavy shots that would have ended most fights instantly. Yet somehow he refused to fall. He absorbed the punishment and survived the round, though the damage was already beginning to show across his face. What made the fight fascinating was that Thomas did not completely crumble. Despite the brutal first round, he continued trying to box intelligently. His jab occasionally snapped Tyson's head back, reminding everyone that he possessed legitimate skill and toughness. Thomas attempted to disrupt Tyson's rhythm by clinching and moving laterally, forcing the champion to reset his attacks. At moments, he even landed solid right hands that slowed Tyson's momentum for brief stretches. It was clear that Thomas had heart and durability. His chin allowed him to withstand blows that would have knocked out many other heavyweights, but Tyson was not just powerful, he was relentless. Round after round, he stalked forward, cutting off the ring with subtle footwork and continuing to hammer the body and head. His punches came in waves. Hooks to the ribs forced Thomas to drop his guard, which opened the path for uppercuts. Every exchange seemed to push Thomas a little closer to the breaking point. Swelling began forming on both sides of his face. Blood appeared near his eye. Yet he kept fighting, refusing to surrender even as Tyson's pressure grew heavier. For a brief moment during the middle rounds, Thomas managed to slow the pace and control parts of the action. His jab began landing more frequently, and his movement forced Tyson to chase instead of dominate. Observers noticed something unusual: Tyson was being forced to adjust. It was rare to see anyone disrupt his rhythm during that era. Thomas showed glimpses of the fighter who once defeated top contenders and held the WBC title. The crowd sensed that the fight had become more competitive than expected, but Tyson was always one opening away from ending everything. As the rounds progressed, the punishment Thomas absorbed earlier started catching up to him. His reaction slowed, and the small defensive gaps Tyson had been searching for finally appeared. Then came the moment that reminded everyone why Tyson was feared above all others. In the later rounds, Tyson suddenly exploded again with renewed aggression. A crushing uppercut snapped Thomas's head upward, followed instantly by a vicious left hook. The challenger staggered backward as Tyson surged forward, throwing punches with terrifying precision. Two more uppercuts smashed through Thomas's guard. Another hook landed clean on the jaw. The barrage was unstoppable. Thomas tried desperately to hold on, but Tyson's finishing instincts had taken over. Within seconds, the challenger collapsed to the canvas. The referee began counting as Thomas struggled to rise, but the damage was too severe. The fight was waved off, and the arena erupted as Tyson stood victorious once again. It was another brutal reminder that disrespecting the most dangerous heavyweight on earth came with consequences. Pinklon Thomas had shown courage, toughness, and flashes of brilliant boxing. But in the end, even his resilience couldn't survive Tyson's devastating power. That victory added another chapter to Tyson's growing legend. At just 20 years old, he had once again defended his titles and reinforced the terrifying reputation that defined his prime years. Fighters around the world watched the outcome and understood the message. Tyson wasn't just winning fights, he was destroying anyone who dared challenge him. His combination of speed, aggression, and knockout power made him one of the most frightening champions the sport had ever witnessed. Moments like this are why the era of Prime Mike Tyson still fascinates boxing fans decades later. His fights felt less like sporting contests and more like violent storms that could end in seconds. And when someone entered the ring with confidence or arrogance, Tyson seemed even more motivated to prove exactly why he was called the baddest man on the planet. If you enjoyed this breakdown of one of Tyson's most explosive title defenses, let me know your thoughts. Do you think Pinklon Thomas gave Tyson one of the toughest challenges of his early championship reign, or was the outcome inevitable once Iron Mike started landing those combinations? And where do you rank Prime Mike Tyson among the greatest heavyweight champions in boxing history? Share your opinion in the comments, and if you want more